We'll pause there at 26 and recognize your reverence for nostalgia. We remember Chutes and Ladders, right? We remember the Chutes and Ladders when we were kids? There we go. We like to call it Steps and Slides.
Oh, switching it
Bit
up.
of a trademark issue there. Look at that. All the players go. I just remember, the idea is similar. You flick the spinner, you move the designated number of spaces on a ladder, you gladly go up, land on a slide. Sadly, you slide down. So I guess...
I was more of a sorry kid, but apparently that's not going to work for this segment.
Of course you were sorry. You know why? Because you have a vindictive side to you. And anytime you got that sorry card, you would just take that piece and throw it across the room. Here we go. Let's use a visual vehicle to disseminate information as we play. So... pretty simple. The idea is who from the point of when the college season ended is going up on the steps or is perhaps sliding down the biggest slide. So why don't we get it started with our colleague Lance Zerline, who is out there in Houston. Lance, let's go Chutes and Ladders, Stairs and Steps with you. Why don't you get us started?
Well, let's go with our first stair, and let's go Carson Wentz. I think Carson Wentz clearly has moved way up the board. And while people saw that he had talent, this is a little bit unusual. A guy who's a two-time honorable mention FCS player has a chance to be one of the first 2 picks of this year's draft. But the reason's simple. Not only did he have a good showing at the Senior Bowl, but, he really was impressive with teams at the Combine. The way he handled his work on the board, I think the way he interviewed, his poise in the interviews and just some of the situations they put him in, I think Carson Wentz definitely has helped himself the most when you think about the slots up the first round, how much more money you make and how much more pressure, but potential glory is at stake as well. That's my guy for stairs.
All right, so that your stairs pick. That's the good news. How about the bad news? Who's headed down that slide? I think it was number 87 or so. You got that gnarly slide.
Yeah, and here's the problem. When you talk about slides for players, a lot of times it's based on the perception of what the average fans... Well, I like that sound effect. That's something you don't want to hear. But a lot of times it's based on the perception of what people think you were supposed to be. So who knows if Kentrell Brothers has really slid. But I think he has a little bit. He ran just below a 4.9 at his pro day. He's incredibly productive, over 150 tackles this year. That's insane. I like the guy. But if you don't test out a little bit better than Kentrell Brothers has, and he hasn't had a very spectacular, in fact, he's had a borderline disappointing postseason, there's nowhere to go but down. So I think Kentrell Brothers' stock has definitely slid since the season, the postseason, the draft season has begun.
Some serious cloud cover out there in Houston right now. It looks like it's the dead of night as Lance Zerline comes to us. You don't get to play Stairs and Steps all by yourself. It is a multiple-player game. So let's get on to DJ's turn. You're flicking that spinner, Stairs and Steps. Who's your climber?
Well, for me, it's a guy Bucky's liked all along. That's Josh Dawson, the wide receiver from TCU. Look at him go up that ladder. Josh Dawson showed up at the Combine, ended up running right at 4.5 flat, which was plenty fast enough. That was the only question I really had on him. You don't see a ton of separation when you study him. You know he can do this, go up and get the football, but could he really, really run? And I think the fact that he put a good time down on paper, he helped himself, went from what I think probably in that middle second round discussion. I think now he's got a real chance to go in the first round.
And because you're a little bit younger than I am, I'm not going to go slip and slide, but I'm going to go crocodile mile. I'm going to go crocodile mile for you, DJ. Who's sliding? There you go. Who's sliding for you?
Well, look, to me, Robert Kimdiche is somebody that on tape he's tough for me to evaluate because he's so physically gifted. But the production is so pedestrian, and that is a tough slide there.
And that is not pedestrian production right there.
No, he did not stick the landing either on that slide. But look, this is somebody, I think he's going to be a victim of the depth of the position. In another year where maybe you have, it's a little bit more shallow at that spot, you see him go in the top 15, the top 20. Now, there's so many defensive tackles in this draft class. You say, okay, this guy has some risk. Why do that? I can wait and get somebody else a little bit later on. Maybe a little bit of a drop-off, but not too far. There's just too much depth there.
All right, Bucky, last but not least, you get your turn at flicking this here spinner. Who do you have climbing?
I have Will Fuller from Notre Dame climbing, and he has been climbing since the end of the season. When you saw him perform at the Combine, you got excited about the speed, the big playability. You go back, you look at the tape, you realize he had 29 touchdowns the last 2 years. He is a guy that can absolutely take the top off of defense. His speed is right now. He can run past anybody, stretch the defense. The biggest question and concern with him is he a 50-50 pass catcher? Can he hold on to the ball? Can he eliminate the drops? Caught the ball well at the Combine. Because of that, I think he is rising. I think he's one of the bullet guys.
All right, Buck, sliding down the chute.
You know, at the end of the season, there was a lot of conversation about Paxton Lynch possibly being the number one quarterback in this draft class. I think now we've come back, and he's probably the third quarterback in this class.
Big slide.
Talented guy, big, strong arm passer, guy that's super athletic, but you have to worry about his transition coming from a pick and stick system, one where he executed a lot of bubble screens, a lot of quick routes, run pass option passes. Can he jump into a regular system where he has to make full field reads, progression reads? I think he's going to need some time. Developmental prospect, I think he falls to the bottom of the first round.
I'd like to.
What about apples to apples? We just pretend like that didn't even exist?
You know what? I think maybe a little bit newer. That's speaking to the millennials. I would like to point out with those graphics, I feel like Mock Draft Live is fun for the whole family. Sort of some Blues Clues elements there to our stairs and steps.